Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the CDL podcast channel. I hope you all are doing super great after that weekend, the long weekend, for a lot of us, at least here in the States. Sorry for the delay on the episode. I was pretty busy on Memorial Day and then had a pretty busy day yesterday on my birthday and just kind of wanted a day of relaxation and spending some time with family and friends. So I kind of apologize for the delay there. But in this one, we're going to do something a little bit different because of that delay. We're going to go over each match from this past weekend and try to do it a little quicker than we normally do because I don't want this video to end up being an hour and a half long or something. So we're going to go over each match briefly, a little quicker than normal, offer some thoughts in general on the teams and what we saw, and then we'll do our predictions for the matches coming up this weekend. Please be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe for more CDL content if you enjoy this video. But without further ado, let's just get right into it. Since I said I want to get this one going a little quicker, we're going to just get right into the matches from the weekend, starting with obviously the Thursday matches going to Friday, Saturday, Sunday. In the first match on Thursday, we saw Atlanta Faze versus Paris Legion. To be honest with you, this match was a little bit surprising for me. I believe I did pick a 3-1 or maybe a 3-0 on the side of Faze because, I think we all thought Faze was going to win. But honestly, Paris put up a lot better fight and showed some potential, a lot more than I honestly thought they were going to. Obviously, we're picking Faze to win this. We expect Faze to win this. Faze is the better team. They're the best team in the game. They're 360 points on the CDL standings. I believe they've already guaranteed a playoff spot. We all know they're making the playoffs, but I think they've mathematically guaranteed it now. And in second place is the Subliners with 250. Faze are 110 points ahead of anybody else. So they're going to be the number one seed unless somebody like New York sweeps the last two events and Faze finishes 10th or something, which obviously isn't going to happen. But yeah, in this Paris, in this Paris versus Faze match, come out on the map one hardpoint, and honestly, Paris looked pretty damn good. Aqua seemed to be back in form a little bit. Scrap struggled in slaying wise. That's the one thing I noticed. I might have tweeted something about it, or I was going to tweet something about it, but I decided to wait a little bit and see how the series went. But I was going to talk about slaying. Obviously, we know Faze is the talent edge over Paris. There's nobody that's going to question that. And it looked like it. If you look at their KDs and stuff and they're just the slaying, I don't normally love to talk about people's KDs, but for the slaying argument, you have to. You got guys on Faze who dropped 22, 21, 26, and 34. And KD's 0.96, 0.95, 1.37, 1.7. And on the side of Paris, you had 28, 18, 18, 20. So they got outslayed by a pretty good amount. KD's on their side, 1.08, 0.67, 0.82, 0.71. They were severely outslayed, but they only lost the map 250 to 211. They were playing very well as a team. And honestly, from that map one, I'm like, wait, this team got 211 off Faze, who you would expect to dominate them. And they got outslayed and still were in the game. I was kind of like, hey, this is kind of impressive. Then they go to standoff. Arcitys joins the Donut Club. That's, really whatever. Unfortunate for him, though, because he did have 690 damage, enough damage easily to get maybe a kill or two, but joins the Donut Club. Scraps goes off 8-1, Temp goes off 10-4. Paris just dominated that standoff, and then I was like, wait a minute here. If Paris is a really good search team, they have a chance to be a pretty good team because they look competitive in respawns. And then the raid control, they get beat 3-1, go to the final hardpoint. On raid, they get beat 250 to 188. I don't really know why they picked raid here. I believe Apocalypse was still left. I don't think it got vetoed. I think that Paris could have chose Apocalypse. And I think Arcitys said something about it in his interview, we left Apocalypse open and they didn't choose it for some reason. And raid is a map that Faze typically tends to be very good on in hardpoint. So I have no idea why Paris didn't choose Apocalypse. Because if you're trying to ego Faze on one of their best maps, if you're a team like Toronto or maybe New York, you could potentially ego Faze on their best map and maybe win it. But if you're a team like Paris, you're not going to want to try to beat Faze on their best maps. But Paris show potential here. The only way I think it could be a little fluky is they still did get beaten every respawn, 3 respawns, and they won the search. Although it was a search on standoff, first time both teams had played it in an actual match. First time it had been played in a match in general. So that could be a little fluky, but Paris showed a little bit more life here. All right, then that second match on Thursday was Toronto versus Florida. Yeah, Florida. And we saw what we expected a little bit early on, and then things kind of flipped. In that last map 5 at least. Florida wins 3-2. That's obviously not what we expected. But hey, you know what? Florida is one of those teams, like we said. I said it going into the week. I picked against them in both their matches. Unfortunately, I picked for the London upset because I figured we'd see the inconsistent Florida, but they started to show some consistency. But we've known all year. I mean, Toronto is a better team than Florida. I still would put them ahead of them in the power rankings. And we know that Toronto is a better team, like I said. But, I mean, like, Florida is that team that, like, on any given weekend, they can make a run and finish top 4 in a tournament, or they're going to finish 12th if they're in that losers round 1, or they can finish 10th or whatever. They could lose their first match, or they could make a run. And here, they honestly look pretty good. They come out on the map 1, they fried on that raid hardpoint, just outslayed them completely. Another situation where, honestly, the fact that Toronto was able to get 180 is kind of crazy since, I mean, everybody in their team had 0.7s. I mean, Sky's fried. Everybody on the team fried. Awakening had the worst KD on the team with a 1.0. Opening hardpoint, especially a raid hardpoint, a map that Toronto is usually pretty awesome on, was kind of shocking. And then Florida comes out, standoff search. Once again, we don't want to take a ton away from standoff search because it's like the first time it's been played in any matches. So it could be a little fluky, but Neptune and Havoc both went double positive, and they kind of dominated 6-2. And then it's like, oh my God, Florida's up 2-0. But we know Control, especially on raid, is a very strong game mode for Toronto, and they come out 3-0 on Control. They look very strong. I mean, Skies had 7 kills. It was just a dominant map. There wasn't even a lot of engagements on the map because Toronto just dominated it so hard. And then Moscow hardpoint comes out. Thought for a second there Florida was going to be able to make a comeback and win the map, but Toronto wins it 250-209. Oh, and then we go to a map 5, and I believe Toronto got up 3-0 in this map. I'm pretty sure. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Florida wins 6 straight maps. They run it off. And Havoc takes over a little bit, 10-5. I mean, everybody in the team played pretty well. Just kind of a shocking map, especially because we've seen Toronto be so good in search over this run they've had of being one of the best teams in the game. And then they get a 3-0 lead in search. And we're thinking, hey, you know what? This is in the bag. There's no way they find a way to not win 3 rounds before Florida can win 6, and they don't even win another round. They get not reverse swept, but they get swept straight 6 rounds. Honestly, it's a weird way for them to lose the series as well, because like we said, they've been so good in search. They've been good in every game mode, though, but for them to lose 2 searches, that's something I wouldn't expect. I would expect if they were to lose a series, it'd be like one of each maybe. They'd lose like a hardpoint, a control, and a search. One of each because they're so strong, or they come out and maybe lose like an early hardpoint, an early search, and then lose like a map 5 search or something like they did in this series. But I don't know, just a weird series from Toronto. Impressive from Florida overall. And I was a little bit worried. My big test was they're going to play a team like London, who they technically should be better than later in the week, and we'll see. And they proved us right, so it's interesting to see, to say the least. Then going into Friday, we had Dallas versus London. This match got a little scary for Dallas. London comes out, takes the opening hardpoint. Paul X had a great map. Overall, I mean, it was good to see Alex come out in his first map back. Go 25-23, look pretty solid because, I mean, we don't know what he's been playing really. We haven't really heard anything from him, so we don't know if he's been staying fresh, playing 8s or anything, or playing COD in general, if he's even just been playing pubs to at least somewhat stay fresh on the mechanics of the game. We didn't really know much about it. And clearly, I mean, he's playing a team, even if Dallas isn't playing the best right now, I mean, you're playing Shotzzy and Illy and Vivid and Krim. I mean, these are good Call of Duty players regardless of how their team is playing gun skill-wise. If you're not shooting straight, these guys are going to beam you, regardless of how they're actually playing overall. And Alex came out and he went 25-23 in the opening map, and I was like, okay. And Afro had a nice little debut, 23-21. Paul X looked great like usual, and Shawnee, he only went 18-23, but he was doing Shawnee things in the map, holding down spawns, being important like he always is. He's always just so solid in the map. And London comes out, wins the map 1. Then the Express search goes to a round 11. Dallas clutches up. I believe it was Krim clutching up. I can't remember in that round 11. So many matches that were watched this weekend. But then Dallas ties up the series 1-1. London actually just fries them on the control. Alex goes off 21-9. So once again, I mean, we're sitting here. Alex had kind of a bad search, but Afro had a really good search. I remember that, though. He went 11-8. And then in the control, Alex fries, and you're like, man, this dude, I mean, he's looking, I expected Alex to not look horrible because, I mean, he's a good player, but I expected maybe some rust. And then after the first 2 respawns, you're like, no way, Alex is really good. And then the hardpoint, Garrison goes 250-244, but Dallas was up like 247 to like 180 or 170, something like that. And then all of a sudden, London chained like the end of P1 into P2 into P3, and then got broken last second on P3 to end the comeback. They almost had a crazy comeback, and that would have put away the series, and I think that was kind of a momentum killer from them. since they were going to lose the map, and then all of a sudden they had a crazy comeback and just lost it last second off a good Shotzzy break. Once again, though, Alex 29-27, Afro 28-25. Everybody in the team around him won. They looked very good. On the side of Dallas, like, yeah, they looked all right, but kind of illy struggling again, 21-29 in the respawn. And then we go to standoff search. Veteran Crim6 goes 9-3. Shotzzy goes 9-3. Everybody on London basically struggles. Nobody had a standout map, and they lose 6-2. So Dallas comes back from down 2-1 and wins the series. Honestly, for Faze, for Faze, what the hell am I saying? For London, it's a decently impressive series, in my opinion, because, I mean, they're playing Dallas, who hasn't been that good, but we'd expect Dallas to be a better team than them, and they come out, and they look pretty darn good. On the side of Dallas, a little bit concerning, once again, because you almost lost to London, you almost blew a lead. It didn't seem like their team had gotten that much better, but we got to move on, because we're taking way too long for these matches. That second match on Friday was OpTic versus Minnesota. This was a super impressive series from OpTic. Obviously, we were looking to see if OpTic would come out and be the old OpTic that we saw before their run at the Major, where they looked awful, or if they were going to be the OpTic that we saw at the Major that looked like they could compete with all the top teams. And they came out, and they look like the OpTic that can compete with all the top teams. I mean, overall in the series, Scump had a 1.2, one of the best series we've seen him play in a while. Formal had a 1.07. Envoy, again, one of the best series we've seen him play in a while with a 1.35. And Dashy with a 1.1, staying around what he usually is. And you look at the map 1, that was really the only close map. It was 250 to 238. Minnesota almost had, once again, another pretty crazy comeback, but OpTic was able to hold them out with a last-second break on, I think, the third rotation of P1. In this map, Scump goes even. Formal kind of fry with a 1.25. Everybody around OpTic's at a 1. And then Minnesota, I mean, we got everybody negative but Standy, who went 31-27. They got outslayed pretty heavily, and that's because they were kind of getting blown out early in the map and then started a late comeback. So that's usually what the scoreboard's going to look like when you're getting outslayed but have like a couple chain hills at the end, where it ends up being close. After this map, I was kind of like a little shaky. We saw OpTic struggle a lot in hardpoint, getting a little concerned that their hardpoint might not be fully there, maybe a fluke at the Major. But then they come out in the standoff search. Scump plays awesome, goes 8-4. They look really good. Envoy had like a crazy 3-piece with a pistol. On this map, they win 6-2, and the search and destroy woes for Minnesota continue after they used to look so good in it. Major Maniac, I thought, might be able to help that, but it doesn't appear so. But once again, it's standoff, so we don't want to credit OpTic too much, and we don't want to knock Minnesota too much because it's like the first time they put it in a match once again. And I saw a crazy stat that OpTic's like 1-10 versus the top. What do you call it? I can't even think of what I'm saying right now. Versus the top like 3 teams or whatever, being like Toronto, Faze, and New York. They're like 1-10 in search against them, so that's concerning. But they win it here at least. And then raid control goes 3-0. I mean, everybody on Minnesota didn't play all that well. I mean, there wasn't even that many engagements because OpTic was frying so hard. Envoy was double positive with a 2.18. Scump was even frying with a 1.45. I mean, takeaways from this series. Unfortunate for Minnesota, it is tough that they have to play OpTic in their first match of the new roster because obviously OpTic's a good team. The takeaways for OpTic, I was like, wow, maybe they are going to maybe not beat Faze, but be very competitive with Faze on Sunday, and obviously we saw how that went. But OpTic looked really good, and for the sake of OpTic's future, it was good to see Scump playing very well because Scump obviously hasn't been horrible this year, but he hasn't been up to the level we're used to seeing him like a top player. He usually picks it up around champs time, but it's good for OpTic to see Scump kind of frying and Envoy too, because Envoy has been good this year, but he's been a little bit more up and down than normal, and he was really up in this match. So it's good to see for OpTic. For Minnesota, it's a little bit scary that you got dominated so hard after that map 1. Then the next match going in the next day right away was Minnesota again versus Paris. And this one was really interesting to me before it started because I'm like, wow, Minnesota looked a little weaker than I expected yesterday, and Paris looked better than I expected in their first match. But Minnesota wins it. They dominate the first hardpoint, 250 to 129. Nobody on Paris played very well. I mean, you got Priest-Up, Major Maniac, both dropping 1.45s. They looked very good, that AR duo. And then you go into the search and destroy on raid. And Paris continues their strong search and destroy, showing from the first match when they won 6-1 on standoff. Now they win 6-1 on raid. And once again, Minnesota has players like Major Maniac, Priesta attached that are very good search and destroy players. And they went 1-7 for Major Maniac, 2-7 for Priesta, and 2-6 for attach. Scraps was 11-2. I mean, Temp 7-3, Zap 6-3. I mean, they won so bad. Aqua didn't have to do anything on the map. He was 1-4, and they still won 6-1. So impressive search from Paris. The control goes 3-1 in the favor of Minnesota. We'd expect that, though. Minnesota is typically pretty good at control. Then the Apocalypse hardpoint goes right down to the wire, and Paris kind of threw this one pretty bad. but 250 to 247 they lose. Once again, I came out of this series more optimistic about Paris, to be honest, because I think we know that Minnesota is probably going to be the better team than Paris in general. But they didn't show me that they were going to dominate Paris like we would expect them to do if they're going to get to a high level. And Paris dominated the search and destroy again on a map that Minnesota has a lot of experience on, and has a lot of good individual search players. They obviously get blown out in the first hardpoint, but they kept that second hardpoint super close for a pretty new team. And the control, although it was 3-1, there were some close rounds. So honestly, they kept the control competitive in most rounds. They kept that second hardpoint super competitive, and they dominated in search. They seem like a team like Aqua teams tend to be when they're good, that can be competitive in search, and they just have to steal some respawns, and they look to be getting better in respawn. So with time, I think that this Paris team, if they stick together for the rest of the year, could have potential. I know it's going to be tough for them to get in that 8 spot, but come the Major 4, if they can make a run to top 6, even get some points, then somehow try to equip themselves to make a top 4 run at Major 5, they have maybe a shot to sneak in at 8. They just might be too far behind, but I think they are going to improve as a team compared to what we've seen for most of the year. Then the other match on the day, the second match was Surge Thieves. This was an interesting one once again because Surge honestly probably should have won the series. I mean, if we're being real, they come out on Apocalypse 250 to 155, kind of stomping Thieves, and we're like, whoa, did Thieves make a mistake here? Obviously, so early to tell. Draza played well and Kenny played all right, but on the side of Surge, Classic was just being the entry man, but everybody else, Octane with a 1.28, Pristini frying with a 1.44, even Gunless with a 1.1. They looked super, super great in that map 1, and I'm like, wait a minute, are the Surge something here? They go to standoff Search. It's a 6-3 win. Venom kind of fries. Once again, it's hard to take anything from standoff until we see a few more matches for each team and which teams decide to play it. Then we go to Raid Control, and Seattle absolutely throws that round 5 on defense. They had a 9-4 life advantage. They just get full wiped and then capped on the B point on Raid, which is the harder point to cap. So honestly, at this point, Seattle should have been up 2-1 in the series. Instead, they're down 2-1. And they come out and fry in the Moscow hardpoint, 250 to 150. Octane was frying with a 1.5. Pristine was frying again with a 1.3. They look so good. Classic didn't have good KD, but once again, KD's not everything. Classic is opening stuff up on the map. He was always out in front of Octane and just being annoying so that the players behind him, Gunless and Octane, could pick up the extra kills. He's flying in front of Pristini. Pristini can pick up the scrap. And then in the final search, Classic, again, plays pretty bad. Everybody plays bad, though, because they lose 6-1. I think they kind of just lost it. I mean, to be honest, the takeaways for this, LA Thieves, they lost 2 hardpoints by 100 points pretty much in each one to Seattle, who haven't really been on that good of a team. They've been the worst team in the league this year pretty much. They should have lost the control to them, and Seattle just kind of gets bullied in search a little bit. I expect Seattle's search to get a little better because they haven't been that bad at it overall this year, especially to start the year. They were pretty good. To be honest, for Thieves, it's a little concerning to see this match since they get bullied so hard in respawns and should have lost all 3 respawns to Seattle. And it's good to see their search play very well, and I expect that with TJ in the lineup. I expect their search to be as best as possible because, in my opinion, TJ is one of the best search players in the world. On the side of Surge, quick thoughts for them, though. I'm encouraged by what I saw. Classic had a pretty horrible series stats-wise, but I feel like he's a glue on the map for them, and I think that Surge has a little more potential. Once again, they're probably not going to make champs because they're so far behind, but I think they have a little more potential than we've seen in the past. Then New York versus LAG. I mean, not much to say here. It's exactly what we'd expect. I picked it to be 3-2 because I thought that there was a chance that LAG could take the search and then the control, because obviously New York is a dominant hardpoint team. They're probably the best hardpoint team in the game. Even if you include Faze in there, they're probably better than Faze at hardpoint. They have their strengths and they stick to them, and they're very good at them. They win the first map by about 50. Then they get taken down in the search on Miami. Then they 3-0 on Garrison Control and win the last Moscow hardpoint. Like I said, pretty much exactly what you'd expect. I mean, my main takeaways here are exactly what we thought these teams are. LAG is going to be a very good search and destroy team that's going to be scrappy in respawns. I mean, they only lost the first one by 50, and they stayed in the second one, scoring 170. Kind of get dominated control, but this is exactly what we'd expect from these two teams. New York, best hardpoint team in the game, is going to take out 2 hardpoints and then win a control and just bully you in respawn and have to find a way to win search if they want to beat the top teams. And LAG is going to stick around in the respawns, but against a top team like New York, they're going to lose them and they'll scrape out a search. They're really not going to get 3 out very often. Going into Sunday, we had Florida versus London. pretty impressive from Florida here. Obviously, Florida, we picked them in general to be a better team than London. I picked the London upset just because, I like to go bold on random picks. Clearly, it wasn't right. I mean, Florida comes out and dominates 250 to 211, then 6-3 on Express Search, and then a 3-0 on Checkmate. And they just come out and dominate. The Checkmate really wasn't all that close. They just outslayed them like crazy. Honestly, a pretty big series from Havoc. He had kind of a rough first hardpoint, but then in the Search and Destroy, he goes 8-6, Checkmate. Control, he goes 19-12. He's starting to seem to find his footing a little bit on the team. They seem to be finding a way to finally win with Skies and Big Wake together when it seemed like they couldn't. On the side of London, I mean, Afro and Alex still, once again, 1.1 and 1.3 in the hardpoint. Everybody kind of struggled in the Search, and then in the Control, they struggled, but they looked pretty good in the hardpoint again. Takeaways, once again, I feel like this London team has some potential. I think Afro is one of the higher skill ceiling players they've had in a long time. He almost is kind of like what they want Dylan to be, a pretty aggressive sub that can slay out, and Dylan just wasn't doing that for them. And I still think we've got Alex, who can be a star if he continues up the consistency. And then we know Shawnee is Mr. Consistency, and if Paul X can kind of be a star, this team has potential. For Florida, I don't want to jump and say too quickly that they're like some top team now, but I want to see one more week of them going 1-0 or 2-0, however many matches they have this coming week, before I really mark them and say, hey, you know what, Florida's a top team, but I'm kind of getting to the point where I'm intrigued by them. Then we've got Toronto versus Dallas. Kind of what we expected. I was hoping Dallas would put up a fight, but they don't. They lose by 100 in the hardpoint on Raid. Bance was frying with a 2.6, 21 and 8. Everybody on Dallas got fried, especially Vivid and Shotzi. Then they go to the Search and Destroy on Express. It's a 6-4 in favor of Toronto, and a 3-1 on Garrison. Control, Vivid got fried again. Shotzi got fried. The two subs of Dallas Empire were just getting kind of cooked, if we're being honest. An interesting match overall because, once again, I expected Toronto to win. I did pick the 3-0, but that was only to pick a 3-0 because it always seems to be something that that happens multiple times a weekend. Every match on this day was a 3-0 or a 3-0. So I was trying to figure out which match I want to pick as a 3-0, and I should have just picked all three. But Dallas is such a weird team because they keep making like all these roster changes, and you think they're going to get better or worse or whatever, and like they just seem to stay the same. Like they aren't getting better. Granted, this is the first weekend playing with the team, so we want to give them time. It's coming up to champs time. They have Crim6 on their team, so you can't count them out. But Dallas is just such a stagnant team to me right now. They keep making these changes, and their team looks so good on paper, but for some reason, they just like can't seem to figure it out. So I really hope they figure it out because, I mean, I'm never going to doubt Crim once again. Like I always say, I'm never going to doubt them. I mean, they could come back next week, and they might be the best team in the game. It wouldn't surprise me because it's Crim, it's Rambo, a good coach, and it's Shotzi, last year's MVP. Illy is still super talented despite his struggles this year. Vivid's very talented. Like this team could bounce back, but right now they're just And Toronto, good bounce back match from them to show that they aren't falling off. Obviously, they lose that close match to Florida early in the week, so we're a little bit worried. And they bounce back against a good, solid team like Dallas. That's not a free win, and they dominate. So good to see them kind of do that. And then what the hell happened in this last match? 3-0 for Atlanta. Obviously, Formal puts up the lowest KD in CDL, not CWL, like all of COD, but in CDL, so Modern Warfare. And this year, he puts up the lowest KD with a 0.46. I mean, we had Scump, Envoy, Dashy all in the 0.8s. Everybody on the side of Faze. Simp had the worst KD for them in the series with a 1.18. He had double 1.38s from Arcitys and Abezy, a 1.55 from Cellium. They just dominated. I mean, the hardpoint on Moscow, they win by 100. Search goes 6-4. Control is 3-0. They just overall dominate. I mean, Formal couldn't get anything going. On the first map, I mean, Envoy and Dashy kind of had it going, and the Search, Scump had it going a little bit, and the Control, nobody on the team had it going. They just get bullied. It's just weird to see because OpTic, after the first match on the week, we think, wow, their consistency that we saw in the major of them being a very good team is going to continue. Maybe they don't beat Faze, but we think they'll be pretty competitive. And Faze, we think, they seem to come out a little slower after their wins, but we still think, I mean, they're a very good team. They should beat OpTic. I expected this to be like a 3-1 with close maps or a 3-2 with close maps, or maybe OpTic could squeak out like a 3-2 with some close maps. But none of that even happened. It was a 3-0 fast, super fast series, just like the last one. Faze dominates. I don't think there was the huge ping difference, but once again, OpTic is a super talented team. I don't think it's like panic button time, but for some reason, ever since they should have beat Faze in their like first time they played way early in the year, they just like are getting dominated by them, like bullied off the map by them. They can't win a search against a top team. And Faze, I mean, how can you take a negative from this? They play OpTic, who we think is probably a top 4 or 5 team, and just bully them around. So we just really can't take a negative from this. For Faze, on the side of OpTic, they got to figure out a way to beat top teams in search. We saw, obviously, they can't beat Toronto, Faze, and New York in search. They're 1-10 against those teams. And then against the rest of the teams, they're actually like one of the best search and destroy win rates. But they just can't beat those 3 teams. Not panic time for OpTic. Could just be a bad match. Formal's not going to drop a 0.4 in every big match. I mean, interested to see how this goes on LAN, but kind of a bad loss for OpTic, especially because they obviously going to LAN, they want to have the best seeding possible. And if you're going to lose to a team in your group, it's most likely Faze, but they obviously want to get that first round bye, and I doubt it's going to happen now because it doesn't seem like Faze is going to lose to anyone in this group because they honestly just simply look too good right now. But that is it for the matches. I kind of forgot to write out my power rankings, but I might just do it on the fly here. I'm just looking at the standings, and I'll probably do it on the fly, so if I screw up, I screw up. But quickly, we'll do power rankings before we get into predictions. At number 12, oh man, at number 12, I think I'm going to stick with Surge since they lost, but I think they're trending up a lot more than we have seen in the past. I actually still think that they're a team that has potential, but once again, they're so far behind that they're probably not going to hit 8th at champs. They're going to need like a top 3 finish at both majors, which is unlikely to happen. But Surge actually showed more potential, so they're not like buried at 12 like they have been the last few weeks where like, God, Surge sucks and they're 12. For me, now they're kind of like at 12, but I think they're trending to the point where if Paris struggles next week or if LAG struggles next week, we could throw them at 11 or 10, and they're kind of on the upswing a little bit. Then at 11, I'm going with LAG actually this time. I liked what I saw out of Paris this week, despite the fact they went 0-2. I think they showed a lot of potential. There's a lot of maps that they could have won that they kind of threw. They played Faze relatively tight in most of the maps, and they won both their searches, which they've been struggling with in general. If they can become a dominant search team, I think they have a chance to steal series against teams that are better than them, which is most teams. So for that reason, I'm putting LAG at 11 because once again, they're a team that's going to be competitive, but they're just really never going to win the big series against the top teams, but they're always going to be competitive, so it's hard to put them down at 12. Then at 10, I'm going with Paris. Paris, a team that is always going to be sneaky, and I think their skill ceiling is potentially higher than a team like LAG. I still think Seattle's skill ceiling might be higher than both LAG and Paris, but I mean, we haven't seen it officially yet, so I got to put Paris at 10 just from the slight potential they showed me in Search and Destroy and keeping Respawns competitive. Then at 9, I think we'll go London. Once again, London goes 0-2 this week, but they showed potential. Afro seemed like he could be a great player. Alex looked very good. We know Paul X can be super good, and we know Shawnee's consistent. So for that reason, I feel like once they get used to each other as a team, you get used to the communication, Alex kind of gets back in the swing. This was Afro's first weekend of matches. Once they kind of get together and playing together, I feel like this team, I mean, they're only 70 points behind in the standing, which is a lot. But if Florida has a flop of a major and London can win a couple matches here to cut it down and they can get a lot of points, they could make it interesting and be within like 20 points going into the final major on the final stage or something, and they could make it somewhat interesting. I feel like they're maybe the team that has the most chance to challenge Florida, but we'll see. Florida seems like they're going to lock it up, but I put London at 9. At 8, I'm going to go with Minnesota. I even could see a way you could put like London ahead of Minnesota because they just look iffy right now. But the talent of players in their team and guys like Attach and Priesta and Standy, Major Maniac, these are very good players that we've seen all like win tournaments, obviously except for Standy. But we've seen Attach, we've seen Major Maniac, we've seen Priesta win multiple tournaments over their years competing. So it's hard to put them below these other players that are kind of unproven like on London and stuff. With guys like Afro, even Paul X are pretty unproven. I mean, Shawnee and Alex have been around and they've been good, but they've never won anything yet in the league. Even before the CDL, they never won anything. And then Afro and Afro and Paul are pretty unproven. So I'm sticking Minnesota just out of respect to the players in 8th, and I think they just have a little bit more consistency in them than London, who could be better, but also can be a lot worse. Excuse me. And then At 7, I'm going Dallas Empire. They are third in the standings, obviously, but that's mostly from their wins early this year. They're still a team that I think has high potential because they have the caliber of players. They have last year's MVP. They're obviously defending champs. They have a super high caliber of players and a lot of potential. They just haven't shown it in a long time, so they have to be down at 7. Then at 6, I'm going to go with LA Thieves. I think that they're a team that once again has a lot of potential, but they looked very shaky in their win this week against Seattle. And if Seattle is the 12th team, like we're saying, they shouldn't have looked that shaky. They shouldn't have dropped 2 hard points by 100 points and probably the control. They probably should have lost, so that's why we're having them at 6. I think they can climb, but 6 for now. The highest they've ever been here at 5, I'm going to put Florida. They went 2-0 this week, so they're trending up, so we kind of got to give them some respect. And all the other teams in that range, Dallas is kind of dropping. Obviously, we can't put Seattle, Paris, London, or LAG ahead of them. Dallas and Minnesota are both struggling. LA Thieves looks to be a little bit shaky right now. And Florida looks like a red-hot week, beating Toronto, and then handling London, a team that, if we want them to be a top team, they've got a 3-0 London because London's supposed to be towards the bottom. And Florida handles them pretty easily, so I'm putting them at 5. At 4, I'm going with OpTic. I'm still keeping them ahead of Florida because we saw a great run from them. We've seen them be better than Florida most of the year. And I want to see a little bit more out of Florida before I let them crack the top 4 in the power rankings, obviously, because I could see a world where Florida's back down to 7 or 8 next week if they have a bad week. But I'm putting OpTic at 4. They're just a good team, and we know they're always going to be, come champs time, we know they're going to be right there at the end, probably in the top 4. So we got to keep them at 4. Third, it's tough, but I'm going to go with Toronto. I can easily see you putting them at 2 for sure, but they do lose to Florida this week, and then it was good to see them come out and dominate Dallas, which is honestly a big match for them too because they're trying to catch Dallas in the standings, which I'm fairly confident they'll do. But I go Toronto at 3 simply because we saw them lose to Florida, and they look a bit shaky overall in that match, and then come out and dominate. New York looks about the same. A little bit of struggles in Search, but they were playing a good Search team. They dominate the respawns, win 3 respawns to win their 1 series they played this week. So we're putting them at 2, which you all know we're going Faze at 1. Faze just absolutely obliterates OpTic this week, and they win a little bit of a tight match, lose a Search against Paris. The maps are kind of tight, but overall they win at 3-1. So I don't see how you could ever have Faze not at 1 right now. But that's going to do it for the power ranking section. This section went a lot longer than I want to, but a lot of you guys say that you enjoy the longer stuff when it's all in one. So I'm going to just quick transition over to the screen for the pick'em, do the pick'ems, and then we'll wrap it up from there. So I'll see you back in a second with the pick'ems and the predictions for the coming weekend. All right, so here we are with the predictions portion of the video. Hope this is all smooth transition. You know, I'm kind of bad with all editing and transitioning anything more than just a basic pod. But here we are. We'll get into it. Try not to keep you too long. I want to keep this video under an hour, and I rambled like usual for over half an hour in the first portion of it. But gonna go with the predictions here. Honestly, I did what I usually like to do. I have my research and my notes on teams, and my basic statistics that I keep. But I also kind of like to look at the matches that are coming up for the first time as I pull up the screen, so I can kind of do like you guys would do if you're doing your predictions. You pull them up and you just go. And I think that's more realistic and a good way to actually feel my true thoughts rather than like overthinking it and really analyzing it too much. If you guys want to see more analytical stuff and more stats behind why I would pick who I would, I'd be completely willing to do that. But I think this way is more fun. So let me know if you got to this point in the video. I know you're a real one and you're all the way into the video. Let me know what you like. If you'd like more in-depth stuff, or you'd like to just me giving kind of off the top of the head, just like things that I think that's more entertaining and more fun for me to do. But if you want me to throw stats in there to back it up as well, with specific map counts and stuff, I can do that as well. But here we go. We'll get right into the predictions. I mean, a lot of you probably look at this first match and you're like, wow, Faze versus Surge, a really exciting one here to kick off the week. You're not looking forward to it, but you know the way I feel about Surge and just love watching them play, love cheering for the upset. So I'm kind of excited to watch this match. I mean, I think we all know we got to pick Faze, but I actually do think I'm going to give Surge a map. This feels like the really easy one to get a 3-0 in, because you seem to always need to pick 3-0s, but I'm going to go with Faze winning 3-1. Surge looked so damn good in the hardpoints, and they specifically looked good on Apocalypse, I believe it was, where Pristini kind of stepped up and just fried in their first match last week. So for that reason, I think I'm going to go with the Surge to win a hardpoint. I think they'll probably play an Apocalypse hardpoint, hopefully map 1. We've seen Faze look plenty shaky on Apocalypse in many situations. If Surge can look as good as they did in their last time they played it, I think they could maybe take a hardpoint or maybe steal a Surge depending on the map. If it's like a standoff or something where teams don't have a lot of experience and Faze looked bad, I think there's a potential that Surge can take that map too. I just think there's a way that they take a map. They're going to be a little more competitive. I expect Classic to come out and play better as he gets more of a comfortable fit into the team, which I think will be a speedy process since, he's played with Gunless before. He's played with Octane for years before. So I think he'll get fit in pretty well. And I actually do think Surge is going to steal a map, which for them, is progress compared to what they would usually do against Faze. Then we've got Empire Gorillas. Oh man, this seems like a match where Vivid's going to want to beat his old team. It seems like a 3-0 waiting to happen because I feel like Dallas is going to be motivated to prove that they're getting better. And they're not a team that can be run over. But at the same time, I feel like LAG is once again that team that hangs around. So I'm going 3-2 in favor of Dallas. I think LAG is once again going to be the team we always see where they get to that map 5, and it's like, man, if they could ever just win a map 5, they're like a good team that could sneak into winners. But I don't think they do it. I don't think that they win a map 5 in this scenario. I think they get to a map 5, keep it super close, but I think Dallas is going to end up winning out. If Dallas doesn't win this match, things are in shambles over there in the Dallas camp. After getting dominated by Ultra, barely beating London, and then you lose to LAG, things would be in shambles for them. They'd be 1-2 and just looking to probably start in losers. But I do think that they pull this one out. I think they find a way to do it. Going into Friday, another weird one. Thieves versus Paris. This seems like another 3-2 waiting to happen because we've seen Paris look pretty competitive last week, look very good in Search and Destroy, but Thieves also looked very good in Search and Destroy and looked a little shaky in the respawn, specifically against Seattle. I do think there's a way that Paris wins this, but I'm going with another 3-2 in the favor of Thieves. I think it's going to be like a map 1 hardpoint win for the Thieves. I think Paris will come out and win that map 2 Search, maybe on standoff once again. And then I think the control probably goes the way of the Thieves because they've been so good at control. And then maybe Paris is able to steal that map 4 hardpoint. It goes to a map 5. TJ takes over, and Thieves win it 3-2. I certainly can see a way that Paris could win this match because, once again, their Search looked very good last week, although so did LA Thieves. I think the formula for winning this match for Paris is they've got to win 2 Searches. Obviously, they have to win a map 5. They're going map 5. I don't think they win it in less than 5 maps, though. So, to me, the formula is steal one of the hardpoints and then take both Searches because I do think that Thieves probably win the control. But Paris is going to have to try to steal that map 1 and punch them in the mouth, maybe get a 2-0 lead and just try to hold off the reverse sweep and not lose 3 straight maps. I think there's a way Paris wins this because of how good they've looked, but this is the problem with Paris. We think they've shown some potential. They look pretty solid. They could beat some teams, but last week they lose 2 matches, and now you look at their matches this week, it's Thieves and OpTic, 2 teams that are just flat out better than them, so it's hard to pick them. They do have the upset potential, but I'm going with the safer pick in LA Thieves. Then the second match on Friday, we've got Subliners versus the Mutineers. This is a super weird one because usually it'd be Mutineers, they're a good team. They'll maybe take a respawn or a map or maybe 2 maps off New York, keep it close. But New York will dominate. But lately we've seen Florida last week look very good. They beat Toronto and then they dominate London. New York obviously only plays 1 match last week. They handled the Gorillas in relatively easy fashion. But Florida looked super good last week. I will say, if Florida wins this match, they're pretty damn likely to go undefeated in their group because they beat London, they beat Toronto, they have to play LAG, who they'll probably beat, and then they have to play Dallas still? I think they can beat Dallas. If Florida's able to win this match, there's a decent chance they go undefeated in their group. However, I don't think they win it. I think I'm going to go in a 3-1 fashion for the side of New York. I definitely think if Florida can continue to play the way they did last week and look pretty good in all game modes, I think there's a chance they win this. But once again, New York is the best hardpoint team in the game. I think New York takes map 1. I think Florida takes map 2, and then I think New York rolls off the control and the hardpoint. The way I think the series could get scary is if Florida is able to split the first 2 maps. I don't think there's really a way that Florida wins the first 2 maps, both of them, but I think they could win the hardpoint potentially, or could win the search potentially. More lean towards the search, but if there's a way that Florida can split the first maps 1-1, we've seen New York struggle in control here and there. If there's a way they can split the first 2 maps and take the control, things get interesting. I would still pick New York to force a map 5 because they are the best hardpoint team. I think they'll win the map 4. But if it gets to a map 5, things could get a little shaky because New York doesn't seem to have a super deep map pool in search, although they are trying to expand it. They've been working in raid a little more. But I think New York wins this 3-1, but there's definitely a way it could get a little shaky and Florida could win it. Ultra Ravens. Oh, man. I think Ultra have a lot to prove here. After losing to Florida, they were a little shook, and you could see that in the Dallas match. They had a lot to prove, and they came out and just handed it to Dallas 3-0. I think we see something like that again. We haven't picked any 3-0s. You know I always say you got to pick some, and this is a 3-0 for me on the side of Toronto. I do, like I said, think London is showing potential, but I think they're showing potential to beat teams like LAG and teams like Paris and more middling teams like Minnesota and Dallas. I think they're showing are showing potential to beat teams like that. We almost saw them beat Dallas, obviously. I think they have more potential to beat those middle teams. I don't necessarily think, I think that there's a way they could pull upsets on more upper middle teams like your Thieves, your OpTic. I think they have some small potential to pull, or even like Florida, they have potential to pull upsets on upper middle teams. I just don't think they're there to pull upsets yet on your Faze, your New York, your Toronto, your top 3 probably. And I think Toronto's motivated to get back to winners and continue to prove that nothing they've done is a fluke, so they win this 3-0. We got OpTic Legion next. Once again, it's another kind of trap match. You feel like everybody's going to, we have so many OpTic fans, obviously. Everybody's going to be picking OpTic to win, except for maybe your couple Paris fans out there might pick them. It's kind of a trap match. Like, I'm definitely picking OpTic, and I'm going to go 3-1. But the reason I say it's a trap match, because once again, OpTic sometimes tends to overlook opponents that they feel they're better than. They certainly are better than Paris, but they tend to overlook people like that sometimes. I feel like lately they haven't been as much because online's a little flukier, and all teams are getting better, so they aren't overlooking them as much as they used to in the past. But I do believe that OpTic could overlook Paris, and Paris could be strong. I think this is going to be like a weird OpTic takes map 1, maybe Paris takes the search in a very close search. I feel like it's like a round 11 search that's going to be coming because OpTic tends to dominate the lower teams in search. Like we said, they're like the best team in search against teams not named New York, Faze, and Ultra. I think it's like a 6-5 search that could go either way. If the search does go the way of OpTic and they're up 2-0, I think they 3-0 Paris. But I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to Paris and say they find a way to take one of the first 3 maps, then OpTic buries them in the 4th hardpoint. So I'm going OpTic 3-1, but I do think there's like a slight chance Paris can force a Game 5 and make this mixy and potentially win it. But if Paris is going to win it, I believe it's got to be in a Game 5. I don't think they're able to beat OpTic in anything less than 5 maps. Then going on to the final match of Saturday, you've got Minnesota versus Seattle Surge. Oh, boys, we like to make one bold prediction every week, don't we? I feel like everybody's picking Faze over Surge, Empire over Gorillas, Thieves over Paris, Subliners over Mutineers, Ultra over Ravens, OpTic over Paris. I feel like I haven't made a bold prediction yet. Is this where we do it? Do we go bold? Do we say Seattle wins a match? I think we do. And I don't even think it goes 5 games. I'm picking Seattle 3-1. I think Seattle showed a lot of potential against LA Thieves. They should have won that match. They were up, or it was tied 1-1 in the control. They should have won the control. They absolutely threw that round 5. They should have been up 2-1, and then they dominated the hardpoint. They should have won the series 3-1. They play Faze, backs are against the wall. If Surge wants any remote chance of making champs, obviously their hopes for champs are very, very dim. But if they want any chance, they have got to find a way to be in a winner's bracket. And they're likely going to be 0-2 coming into this match unless they pull off a miracle and beat Faze. I hope they do because that'd make things really interesting. If they're able to take out Faze, the least likely team to beat Faze beats them, that'd make things really interesting. And let's be honest, Faze is probably still going to win even if they're in losers. So, let's just make it mixy at least. If Surge can find a way to make winners is like the only hope they have to maybe make a run to like top 6 and start getting some points to maybe make champs. Obviously, it's the longest shot in the league to make champs, but got to start somewhere. They looked a lot better last week against Thieves. I think they start to improve some more against Faze. I don't think they beat Faze, obviously, but I think they start to improve a little bit more. I think the big thing is they improve their search game. To me, this is like a Surge, punch them in the mouth and hardpoint. Surge, win the search and destroy. Lose the control, and then come out and win the hardpoint. Obviously, there's definitely a way I see Minnesota win the series. They're the better team, so it's probably safer to pick them. But I just want to go bold, and I want to say Surge wins this match. You know, we like to go bold once a week if there's a match to do it on, and that's what I'm doing it on. So Surge 3-1. I know we never pick them, but we got to sometimes. They can't lose every match, can they? And they're on the biggest match losing streak, so obviously they can. But they ended here, because I think that losing to Faze would put them on a 9-match losing streak. So they ended here. They win this match. They don't go to 10 straight matches lost. Octane's happy. We see some smiles in the cams. Pristini fries. They win at 3-1. They'll probably get 3-0'd, but we'll see. Then moving on to the Sunday of matches, we've got some pretty decent matches. I feel like this could be a weird another Sunday where we could have a triple set of 3-0s. I could see Florida, Atlanta, and New York all 3-0ing. But I also feel like LAG, they make things competitive. We could see a 3-1, 3-2 here. Faze Thieves, you could see the same thing, 3-1, 3-2. And Empire, if they find their form, we could see a 3-1, 3-2, especially since they're playing Clay. They probably are motivated to beat him. But let's not skip ahead. Moving into the first match, Florida, LAG. I'm obviously going to go Florida here. I think they're going to win this. The thing is, do I want to give LAG a map, 2 maps? I think I want to give them 1 map. I think I'm going to go 3-1 for the side of Florida. I think that Florida is a team that when teams hang around against them, they'll find a way to lose themselves some maps because we've seen them lose plenty of maps this year. I think LAG is just going to hang around in the respawn. I think that Florida will win that first map, though. Then I think LAG will come out and win that search. I think they'll hang around in the control, but eventually lose it, and once again, hang around the hardpoint and lose it. So I am seeing a way where I could see LAG forcing a map 5, maybe winning a map 5, because they're just going to hang around in respawns. If they find a way to win the first hardpoint, I'll actually have faith in them because I think they could get up 2-0. They could easily get reverse swept, but I do think there's a way that LAG could hang around in the respawns enough to win one and find a way to win the series, but I think Florida, with the way they look last week and the way we see LAG always lose close matches, I believe you got to go with Florida. Then second last match of the weekend, Faze Thieves. Another weird one because we've seen Thieves get blown out by Faze with old rosters, and then with more recent rosters, we've seen them look a lot more competitive against Faze, where they forced them at 5. They could have potentially won it. I think that was in stage 3, but obviously they end up losing it. And, man, it's tough. I'm going to go 3-1 again, Faze. It's so hard to pick against them. I want to pick Thieves because I think it'd be fun. I want to pick Thieves and I want to pick Surge against them because I want to see Faze go 0-2 and just see how crazy things could get with Faze potentially being in losers and see if they can make like a miraculous run. But I mean, I think there's a possible chance they find a way to lose to Thieves. I mean, who knows? Weirder things have happened. They lost to LAG when they were in 12th. I mean, maybe Surge can find a way to do some crazy stuff. Probably not. Thieves probably don't find a crazy way to beat Atlanta either. I'm going 3-1 just because I think Thieves are such a good respawn team and have so much talent that there is a way that they could put the guns up, match Faze's talent for at least 1 map and win it. They've also looked very good in search recently. They have TJ, so they could win the search. There's a way that Thieves win 2 maps and maybe pull off the upset. That's super unlikely, but I could see them maybe pulling off 2 maps, but I'm just giving them 1 out of the fact that I think with how good they are in search with TJ recently and how talented they are, there's a way that they got to find to win 1 map. So I'm going to give them 1. Then the final match, the Game Fuel double points. Oh, it's an interesting one. It's Empire Subliners, but I don't think it's going to be all that interesting. I'm going 3-0 Subliners. From what we've seen from Dallas, they got 3-0'd by Toronto pretty handily. They haven't looked that good. They're going to be coming off 2 days to prepare for New York, but New York always seems to come out hot. I think there's no way that Dallas beats them in the hardpoint because of how good New York's been in hardpoint. And then as long as New York could win the search, I think they 3-0. I think there is a chance Dallas comes out, wins the search, and then it maybe is a 3-1. I'd be shocked if Dallas won this. Once again, Dallas is one of those teams, though. They got Crim on their team. They could randomly flip the switch, and they could be amazing next week. But they've shown no sign that they're very close to flipping that switch, so I'm going with Subliners 3-0. So there you are. Picks for the weekend. We went Faze, Empire, Thieves, Subliners, Ultra, OpTic. We went with the Surge. Do with that what you want. Then we went with Florida, Atlanta, and New York. So that is going to do it for this episode of the podcast. I hope you all enjoyed. Please be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you did. I hope you all enjoy watching the matches, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.